So when you think about your career and you think about maybe even the early days, what were some of the shows where you think back and you go, I can't believe I did that?
Uh, my constant worst shows is always the shows where someone screams out something incredibly racist at. That's always the worst. It's always the worst because it's just the crowd have to deal with the awkwardness, people
Right.
calling that person a piece of shit, that person being removed, and you still have to act like, hey, it's
Right.
okay.
Right.
I've
You're
been
like,
called,
sir,
I've been
Uber
called,
sauce.
right? I've been called nigga before. It's no big deal. Let's
Oh my God.
perhaps you
So
guys want some nachos.
right, right. The check is being dropped, someone's being forcibly removed, you know.
Yeah,
So like when that happens, because that
it's
is
happened like at least 3 times, by the way.
so how do you handle that? And has it changed to how you handle that as progressed in comedy? Or is it always
It
just like
it will
whatever?
it most the first 2 times I was hosting.
Hmm.
The first time it happened to me was in Davenport, Iowa, at the Funny Bone. I was hosting, packed house. I'm up there doing my thing, and a woman screams out, "Speak up, nigger!" And I couldn't quite hear it. I heard something, but I knew it wasn't right.
Right.
And then the crowd got weird. It was removed, and then I plowed through it. Come to find out, this woman, because they ended up making the local paper. This woman
Oh
was
my God.
this woman. Well, it ain't the local paper because she was arrested because she was being disorderly conduct. Come to find out, she was in charge of the minority program at her job. So I was like, all right, well, comedy, here we go.
Right, right. Oh my God. And then has it happened to you when you've been headlining?
Yeah, it happened to me a while ago when I was headlining, and the guy came up to me and was like, "No disrespect, man. I just got carried away." I was like, "That's not getting carried away." I was like,
That's the
"That's
funny.
not getting carried away, sir.
Like, like
You and I have different definitions of getting carried away."
he's like, sorry, I was just trying to have a good time, you know?
I just,
Like
man, I just
that's
felt so relaxed.
I really thought I could be myself, you
Right.
know.
You brought a naturalness out of me, man. And I got
Oh,
carried away. I got carried away in my emotions. I was in my feelings.
that's the classic thing of like the heckler is like, I was trying to help. It's like, does that not help? Does that not
Right.
help to shout
Right.
that out in the middle of a show?
You can't recover from that.
Right. Yeah.
Where's your skill set at? I thought you were the headliner.
So what do you actually do? Because I think a lot of people that would pretty much ruin the night. So that happens in the middle of the show. Do you go after that person? Do you just let the club take care of it and move on?
I generally will let the club take care of it and then just say shit to the person as they're being removed. But
Hmm.
that time we didn't know quite who said it. I was just like, who the fuck said that? What happened? And no one pointed it out. And then that dude came up to me and was like, no disrespect. He stayed for the whole show. He was not
Wow,
removed.
that's insane. That's like a gun going off where everyone's just like,
Yeah, someone was shot, and we're not
right.
saying who. Yeah, I mean, listen, man. I just had this conversation just earlier today about the beauty of a live show. You never know if you're gonna get a standing no or get called nigga. That's the beauty of a live show. You don't.
It's really two ends of the spectrum.
There's
You
really,
know.
hey, either way, both crowds got carried away.
Right. Either way,
I
you're
got
gonna
swooped up. I didn't even have
right.
a good time, and I found myself standing for this idiot.
Right, right. My God, that's nuts. So then, when you're younger and that something like that happens to you, does it shake your confidence as a comic, or did you have sort of the
It
composure to be
shakes
like,
your
whatever?
confidence until you start telling stories with other comics, and then it's just like, oh, part of course.
Right, right,
And then it's just
exactly.
like, once you
That's
get it out there, if I would have kept it to myself and never shared with anyone, it might have been like something that I would have harbored where anything would have went down. Someone had
right.
screamed anything to me, and I'd be like, "What you just call me?"
Right. Right.
But
It's
I
interesting.
work through it, and stuff roll off of me, and so many things rolls off of me. Once you know that where you're traveling in certain places, it can happen. You just kind of once you know something that can happen, then it's easier to just to deal with it. But I mean, I want when people if anybody said it now and it hasn't happened in a long time, if anyone said it now, I want names, addresses, phone numbers, video taken. I want it all. I want this person's life ruined. But
Right.
before it was just like, you know, the club should be handling all of that.
It's interesting. I was just talking to another comic about like the conditions of comedy that we deem acceptable, right? Like if you were working at a bank and someone in the it's a crowded day at the bank and someone in the back of the line screams that, you would go, I should probably not work at this bank. Like I
That's
think
true.
this is a bad bank. But in comedy we go, I mean, it's just that's were you playing that club? Oh yeah,
With
that's you know.
this is the unnaturalness of stand up, which makes it so much more rewarding when you are able to grind out a career in it. In that the the nature of stand up comedy is not natural. If you think
Right.
about it, from what we do to the audience, like our job is to trick the audience into thinking they're having a conversation with us, even though they're not saying anything at all. But also, the club is saying, we want you to get as drunk as possible, but behave. Please keep your table talk down to the minimum. But for God's sake, don't just order water. Get
Right.
all the booze you can in your system, but behave yourself.
Right.
Don't
Right.
interrupt the show. It is a two drink minimum. At minimum, we want you buzzed. At
Right.
minimum, we want you to get annihilated if possible. If you can keep your shit together, can you do that? Can you do that for an hour and a half? Drink continuously and behave yourself and enjoy the show? It's just not natural.
Right.
It's not
It
natural. And
really
not
isn't.
even factoring in the drinks that they had before the pre-gaming that they do. It's just not it's not natural. So anytime, you make a career out of it, anybody to get paid from stand up, kudos to you because you are doing something unnatural and you're making it seem like it's the most natural thing ever.
Yeah, that's the great trick, right? Is that you go up there and people they go almost where they go, were you making that up? You know, were you was that just coming, is that improvised? Is that all? And isn't that sort of the magic trick where it's time and years and just hours spent of perfecting and perfecting when you get up there
Right.
like it's so calm and comfortable, you
Right.
know.
Also takes a high uh degree of being able to not give a fuck when it's time to not give a fuck. Like you want to do your job, but sometimes there's just so many variables that make it hard for you to do your job, and you just gotta say, I don't give a fuck. Like
Right.
you can't. You're doing your best, and you can't. Like you just can't take that show home with you. You
Right.
just can't.
So how that's a good point about taking a show home with you. How long into your career do you think that you started to realize that some things you just have to leave? Because I think when you're, at least for me, when I was starting out, it was like I internalized a lot of shows where
Yeah.
if I did poorly, it really, and still sometimes, but not as much, where you can start to say, well, the lighting, the sound, this and that. How long did you think did it take you to get to that point where you could sort of be more comfortable with that?
You know, I I think once I found my voice it made it easier to release. When you're struggling or something doesn't go well and you haven't quite found your voice in stand up, you're kicking yourself because you know something's wrong, and you try to blame it on the audience, but deep down you know it's internally that you haven't quite figured out the rules of the game for stand up for you. But I feel like once you find your voice, it's easier to be like, this is my voice. There is no other voice. So if this
Mm-hmm.
voice don't go well, I can leave it. I
Right.
can leave it. Like this is me. And also you came to see me. I wasn't in New York hustling in front of the comedy club trying to give away 2 tickets and you begging you to come see me. And I did that
Right.
once. I was performing somewhere in Bloomington, Illinois, and this group was debating whether to come in. We had nobody there. I was like, please come in, just come in and watch the show. And they came in and they didn't like it. They ended up leaving through my set. And that bothered me. That bothered me. I was just like, what do I have to do? I'm good, but but I still hadn't found my voice, and they wasn't committed to comedy either. So it's probably best that
Right.
they did leave because, who knows what they would have done.
Right. It's hard, and this is why sometimes I'm sure you've had the sort of surprise show, where maybe it's a corporate gig or a college gig or something, or a bar show, whatever it is, and they go, get up there and start talking. And you go, wait, none of these people know there's a show happening. They go, well,
Hmm.
it was in an email, but nobody reads the email,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That
Yeah,
never
the goal
works.
is to graduate out of those shows.
Right. When you're going through your earlier days, do you have shows like that where you're sort of in a no-win situation, but you just didn't have the time in to say, this is actually how we need to do it, or no, I won't do this.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times shows are set up to fail, and that people don't realize like stand up is a very intimate setting. You need people kind of up on you. So when there's a large stage and there's a lot of space in between me and the audience, I already know I'm starting the game out, over par.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I already know I'm starting the game out bogey bogey.
Right, right.
Because like you get the show, it's just not sat well, and it's you need people. It's not like if you and I go and see a band, and you and I are at a bar, and you and I could be conversating the whole time, and the band could be playing, and they can get done, and you and I could both turn around and clap and be like, they are amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I talked the whole time, but we just enjoyed the vibes they gave. With stand up, we need people to hang on to every word. Every word that we say is crafted to elicit a response. And if there's conversation going on and there's space in between that messes with your timing and your delivery, all of those things go to factor into not having a good set. So if the room isn't set up well, if somebody's asking me to do an independent room or something like that, first thing I do is try to go on a site, a website or something, and see what the layout is.
Mm-hmm.
Because the
Right.
first thing I say is, hey, man, I can't do your room. Why? Because people are 30 feet away and they should be 6 feet because it's COVID. That's it. Right. Like
Right,
this is
right.
before COVID. It's just like, yo, what? No, no,
Right. Right.
no.
And some people, they just don't know. They don't know because if they've never been to a stand-up show, or if they've never booked
I
stand-up,
know.
they just think, well, they're funny. We have a microphone, you
Yeah.
know.
They think we have a room, we have a microphone and a sound system. This should work. But
Mhm.
there's a lot more that goes into it. And part of it is the intimacy of the show.
Yeah. When do you think you start to realize that intimacy is important? Because I think when you're young and you're new, you're so nervous and stuff to get the jokes out that sometimes you're ramming it down the audience's throat.
Hmm.
And then there's got to be something that clicks. They go, oh no, this has to be, I got to create something here. What did you sort of, when did you start to feel that?
Once again, I think it comes with finding your voice. Like, I say when you're starting out, accept all shows, go up on all stages, doesn't matter, work on your craft always. And then you almost have to earn the right to be a little bit more selective. But I just think when you start to find your voice, you realize certain ways that you have an effect on the crowd and other ways you don't. Like, I'm not a great storytelling comic. I always like the storytelling comics to be able to keep an audience engaged in between laughs is really riveting to me. But I'm more of a setup punchline guy. And so I like to stay on top of them like that.
Hmm.
Um, but those storytelling comics and being able to tell stories with a really drunk crowd, that's an impressive feat. But it's really still just finding your voice where you start figuring out how you can be intimate with a crowd because it's different for how I do it will be different from how you do it and it'll be different
Hmm.
from how someone else does it.
You bring up a good phase of a comedian's life is those early days where you take everything, you take every show, and you take every opportunity to perform. When you think back, do you think of any shows where I always like to ask this, where you drove the farthest for the least amount of money? Sometimes it's no money, where somebody goes, "Hey, I'll give you 5 minutes," and then the gig is 5 hours, 6 hours, and you go, "All right." Can you do? What is the most miles you think you put down for?
I flew. The one stands out. I flew to Myrtle Beach to host for $125.
Oh my god!
I
Oh,
flew
that
to
is.
Myrtle Beach to
Oh my
host
god!
for $125.
Oh my god, dude!
$25 a show, 5 shows, 125. Took some L's on that trip.
Yeah,
Took
unless you
some
have
L's.
wings, that is gonna
Outside
be a
from
loss.
Wisconsin to Chicago. But I think now, like when I started, I live in Wisconsin, so Milwaukee and Madison were the two. They had two clubs, and it was both on a Wednesday night. Was the only open mic really in town in
Hmm.
Wisconsin. So I would just go Wednesday, one Madison, Wednesday, the other Wednesday, Milwaukee, and that was it. Like that was where it was just 5 minutes. That's how I just built an act, just going up religiously
Hmm.
every week, and it was just like there's a certain degree of confidence when you can make people laugh that at first you couldn't make laugh because
Hmm.
there was regulars there at
Hmm.
these open mics and you wasn't making them laugh. Then you start to make them laugh, and then that's when you start getting out on the road. But then you start finding that different demographics like different things, and then it's a whole new process over it where you just mind blown, where just like the really good comics, just it doesn't matter. You put them, drop them on the island, and they're coming out. They're coming out gold. So
That's I think that's interesting. The idea of hitting, you go, first of all, you go back and forth in between, and you build, you're building it in pieces where when you're starting, I think there's this thing of, you go, I gotta find 20 minutes, I gotta find 30 minutes. You think you're gonna come upon it like that, right?
yeah, it's so ridiculous.
It's insane. It's insane. have
That's
you
ridiculous.
uh have you had the thing where they go, "Hey, can you do 20?" And you go, "Yeah, of course I could do 20." And then you go, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have to go write 17 minutes." you know
No, so I never really got that. What happened to me once was I was middling and the headliner didn't show up. And so I ended up doing the entire show. And it was just like, what the and he didn't give me all the money. He paid me like the headliner and didn't give me all the money. At the point I was just like, yeah, that's what's up. I got that headliner money. But now I look back, I was like, man, I should have got all the fucking money.
Right.
But as far as time goes, the only time when I first built my first hour, I built my first hour, and then I just kind of stopped writing and just was goofing off. And then when you have that hour and then you start to dislike it, you just jokes start to fall off. And
Mm-hmm.
so then it was like, can you do 50, 55? And I was like, no, I could do 45. But it was more so because I didn't want to do, I just wasn't liking my act and I wasn't writing. Hit that wall. But
Right.
other than that, like generally speaking, I've never been caught up where I've been asked to do time and couldn't fulfill it. I've been asked to do time and couldn't fulfill it because I wasn't funny, but I had the time.
Right. Right.
I had the time. It just
Right.
wasn't good.
Yeah. Right. That's always such a rough test to go. You go, of course I have this. Not even to lie to say, oh yes, I have it, but you know you don't, where you think you have it. And then you
Hmm.
go get tested and you go, oh my God,
Hmm.
I don't. You know, it's
I'm
mind
not
blowing.
good at all. I'm not
Right.
good at all. But like
R-
eventually, like those things you put in your little tank, you throw them as fuel, and eventually you burn out of it, and then hopefully you burn out of it, and it doesn't stick with you. So when I think about the hell gigs and stuff, it's the ones where I struggled and not for anyone else. Those you put in the fuel, like, and then you get up and get to the coffee shop and put the pen to the pad to make sure shit like that happens fewer and further between. But I don't think
Yeah.
there's if you kill every time you're doing something wrong.
Right. Right. Yes. There's something there's like a sort of the idea that like good comedians in their mind never kill and bad comedians are always killing, you
Oh
know,
gosh, yeah,
where
yeah,
you talk to some people and they go, that was great, huh? And you go, what
yeah,
was
right.
great, you know?
Well, you're right. What was great about it, yeah. So yeah, you shouldn't beat yourself up too much, but then you shouldn't pat yourself on the back too much as well. I'd rather beat myself up, to your point, than pat myself on the back. But I try to be realistic. Like
Mm-hmm.
I try to be in the moment. If you're in the moment, then you can appreciate exactly how you're doing. But if you're not in the moment, you'll be thinking you either killed or didn't kill or whatever. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the whole thing is whatever it is that your method is to get you to keep performing at whatever level. Because some people say they kill all the time and they do kill a lot. And some people say they never kill and they do kill. Some people say they kill and they don't. It's just, yeah. But most of the newbies say that though. Most of the newbies like, I
Mm-hmm.
killed that shit. And there's always someone else that's like, no, you didn't. And I'm always like, wait, that's killing?
Right.
That's
Right.
always my
Yeah.
question. Oh, that's killing? I had no idea. I've been
Right.
killing a lot too.
Oh my
If that's
God.
killing,
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's such a fun thing to, because there is a little bit of delusion that has to go into this, but some people you have to walk the line, you know, and some people they step over and they never come back, you
we're
know.
comics are natural dreamers. So
Right.
it's I mean, delusion is definitely what can creep in. Delusions is like you got to find that balance of, that's why I tell comics all the time and just record your set and listen back to it.
Right. The
Laughs don't
audio
lie.
yeah, the audio won't lie.
Laughs
Right.
don't lie, right?
Right.
You can
If you're
think you
sitting
killed
with
all
this
of it,
the stopwatch, you're like, that's been a long time
right?
since
Oh
everyone
man, I
laughed.
killed it. Actually, I was in the back recording, and
Right.
here's the
Let's play the
joke, and
tape.
like, right,
Yeah.
let's see where you killed it at. Yeah, so
Yeah. You know, you brought up the idea that comics are dreamers, you know, and they are, and they're also, we can be fragile. Um, have you had any shows
when you say
where,
fragile, do you mean the most fragile?
yes, right, the most fragile thing, yeah,
Not fragile, the most fragile.
right, right, exactly. No one could be around us, extremely sensitive, highly fragile people. Do you have any shows where you look back and you go, that almost broke me? That, where it just, you have that moment where you're like, what am I doing in this business? And, but you
A
don't
particular,
break. Any, or
uh,
I
I,
guess any, or moments, stuff like that.
I would say right around 2009 or so, I had just gotten to a point where I was just like, come on, man, there's got to be something
Mm-hmm.
more than this. It's got to be something more than this. And it's
Right.
just, and once again, it was all self-reflecting. It wasn't what anybody else was doing. It was just internally, I was just struggling with the process of creating. And
Right.
so, and then once I unlocked that box, I haven't really thought much about it, but there's always shows that make you question, am I doing the right material? That's why, like, I'm a Midwest guy, but I always try to go out to both coasts at least
Mm-hmm.
once a year. Well, obviously not last year, but I always try to go out to both coasts as a gauge to go. And I always
Right.
felt like that even the open micers or whatever, I was like, if you want to know where you're at, like identify who you think is the funniest person in the room and try to go after them.
Mm-hmm.
Follow that person. Like always try to follow the funniest person in the room. If you want some sort of gauge to see if your stand up is improving or whatever. Like that's and so for me it's just like every now and again I go out to New York and LA and just hang out with my friends and go up on stage with them and see like, all right, let's go and see where we're at. Because when you're on the road, the show is set up for you to succeed. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
going to LA, New York, it's really not. It's,
Right.
you're going up and you don't know who's going up in front of you or who's going up after you. But on the road, it's set up for the host and then the middle act, and they're supposed to set the table for you. And then the headliner is supposed to knock it all down. But that's not really a great gauge of what's good and like if you're doing it the right way.
That's a really good point. And it leads me to the question of, you talk about, on the road it is supposed to be set up for you, is that if you're a headliner, right? The
Hmm.
MC feature. Have you ever had the situation where as a headliner you go, well, this was not set up at all, where the either the MC or the feature does something crazy and you're like, what are
Yeah,
you doing?
that's why so many comics are now bringing comics with them on the road to control
Hmm.
that variable. To
Right.
control that variable of a club not knowing how to book the room properly. I prefer to have people go up and and I rather them go up and kill in front of me than go up and eat it because I mean both are kind of holes that you got to
Yeah.
crawl out of, but one is a fun hole.
Right. Right.
One
Yeah.
is a glory hole and the other one is just is a shithole, and you got to try to crawl out of an
Right.
audience that's been bored for 40 minutes, and so you got to try to shake them up.
Yeah.
Where if somebody goes up in front of you and do really well, at least there's that energy going on. You get to ride that energy. But yeah, there's so many things that clubs do where they self-sabotage, they sabotage their own show, and
Hmm.
they don't even understand it, and it's just but I also kind of like, sometimes I like the thrill of that.
Hmm.
I like the thrill of, oh, this person is definitely not someone that I would want, and there's some music or physical act or whatever. But no offense to those comics, I always feel good about going up after comics like that because I have something to say, and a lot
Hmm.
of times those comics don't.
Hmm.
They're just fun. They're fun
Right.
comics, and people enjoy them, have a good time. Sure, today, I feel like with stand up, you want to take the audience somewhere, And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel like these people that's up killing and doing all these things are taking the crowd somewhere, but they're just running around in a circle. They're
Right,
not actually
right.
taking them anywhere. They're just taking them in
Right.
a circle. But it's so such a dynamic. Like, yeah, there's comics all the time that's out there that's getting it in. And that's the beauty of it. Like that's how you I tell people all the time, like if you're the middle, like, you know, go out and get the headliner, but just go out and get them the right way. Like don't step on premises, don't go over your time, don't be excessively dirty just to be excessively dirty. Don't,
Mm-hmm.
play play the rules. Like don't do any crowd work. Just do what you need to do to and then do it the right way. And then that's how you kill it. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Before we get out of here, I want to ask if you have a bad show on the road, at home, whatever it is, what's the thing that you like to do to sort of get yourself out of that funk? Are you, is there like a coping mechanism or something that you like to do that you go, all right, that was bad. I'm stopping at McDonald's. What's your thing? Do
I
you
like
have a
the
thing?
I like the stew in it.
Really?
Yeah, I like the stew in it. I like to not feel that way again. So I like the stew in it.
Yeah.
And then I just try to figure it out. And then I try to then I tweak because I'm not going to ever have a major overhaul of my act,
Mm-hmm.
but I can self-evaluate and be like, oh, you did this wrong. And then you had them, but then you lost them, but you lost them because, you didn't read the crowd right properly. And so,
Right.
but I'll try to stew in it. It depends on how bad the show was. But if it's just like I just didn't have the show that I want, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
stewing, no stewing, no McDonald's. Let's go kick it. I didn't have the show that I want, but I got the job done. I passed. It was a B minus. Like no one's asking for their money back. Ain't nobody rushing to come see me again either. So
Right.
as a
Right.
passing grade, we're good.
Yeah.
Call it a wrap.
Sometimes it's just you win the game. You just
Right?
win.
I
Like,
won. I won. I gave up 38, but I scored 40. That's good D.
right.
I'm plus
Exactly.
I'm plus two.
To wrap up here, Kevin, what do you think that you've learned if you've had bad shows through your career, when you're starting out, especially? What do you think that you've pulled from those bad shows early on that is giving you something today?
Oh, that's easy. Just mental toughness.
Right.
Just mental toughness. We think about all the bar shows when you go and perform, and like you said, it's free admittance, and so no one's really invested in the show. You got shitty sound systems. You got
Yeah.
people going over their time. You got poorly booked shows. You run into all of that when you're starting out, and it just builds toughness.
Right.
It
Right.
just builds like I don't give a shit. Like that's probably it. Just the ability to persevere through all of those things that don't go your way. It just adds a coat.
Right. Right. It's probably something where you look back and you don't even know it's been built,
You don't even
until
know.
one day you're like, oh, I have that, you know.
Well, and then you see someone bitching about something, and you go, "What the? Shut the man! Get out of here! What's wrong with you?"
Right.
And then
Yeah.
because you just realize that what they're going through ain't nothing
Right.
bad at
Right.
all, right?
Right.
It's just like, oh man, I'm hungry, man, and all they got is quesadillas here. What the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Oh
Get
my
your ass on
god.
stage. Get on the face. Yeah.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
god.
yeah.
Kevin, tell people where they can find you, hear you, see you.
A couple of things going on. I'm getting back on the road. My website is they got a new website, Kevin Bozeman. Instagram, Kevin Bozeman one. And then I have a podcast, which basically is sports heavy and sports gambling heavy. It's called the Ball Hog Podcast, which is available on all podcast sites. But other than that, man, I'm just now starting to get really back on the road. I'm starting
Yeah.
to dust off the cobwebs.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it won't take long. Thank you so much for doing this, man. I
I
really
appreciate it,
appreciate it.
man. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course.